Welcome to Bite Size Bunny. My name's Tony, and today we are going to be ranking every game in the Dark Pictures Anthology series. Without much further ado, let's get to it. The most recent installment in the Dark Picture Anthology series is unfortunately the weakest entry as well. This should have been awesome. It's basically John Carpenter's The Thing, but in space instead of Antarctica. Sadly, the final product is just a bunch of underbaked ideas that left me wanting more. The story feels very paint by numbers, the characters are all very forgettable, and the gameplay is made up of generic stealth sections and mind-numbing puzzles. I was really let down by this one. Hopefully, the next chapter in Season 2 will be much better. Little Hope is a little rough to get through. The initial setup for the game, with the mystery surrounding the witch trials that took place in the town of Little Hope, was interesting enough to get its hooks into me and have me invested in the story. But unfortunately, it all builds up to one of the most underwhelming endings you could possibly imagine, featuring a twist reveal that is so painfully bad it almost feels like a slap to the face. Once again, the characters are forgettable. While I liked Andrew and Taylor, I didn't really care about anyone else. And when it comes to characters like John and Angela, they're such insufferable assholes that I was seriously contemplating more than a few times on trying to have these characters have an early end to their story. After playing through Man of Medan, I was shocked at how much of a letdown this one was. The Devil in Me should have been great, but it's kind of just there. The game basically feels like what if we took the Saw movies and turned them into a more traditional slasher, while also implementing a few supernatural elements here and there. The characters this time around are fine. There was no one on the cast that I was trying to intentionally off like I was with some of the characters in the previous two games, but at the same time, they're still not great. I liked Aaron and Jamie, but the other characters felt one-dimensional and uninspired. The story's alright, it doesn't really do anything all that innovative or interesting, and after playing through 3 Dark Pictures games leading up to this one, you can definitely start to feel the formula here. It doesn't do much to break the mold by any means, but at least it feels competent for the most part. Though I will say the game does have some pretty rough pacing. The first act feels like it takes forever to get going, and by the time I got to the final act of this installment, I was just ready for it to be over. It's not a bad game, it's not a great one either, it's just kind of there. Man of Medan is a great start to this series, and it immediately had me excited to jump into the next 3 installments in the first season. I knew nothing about this game going into it, and it ended up being such a pleasant surprise. The setup is great. I loved the premise of being trapped on this haunted ship where something evil is lurking around trying to pick off your friend group one by one. But what really makes this game work for me is its characters. I loved the cast of characters in this game. It didn't take long for me to get attached to them, and when anything did happen to the characters, I genuinely felt terrible about it. So much so that once I beat the game, I reloaded the final chapter to replay through it again and correct some of the mistakes I had made. Really, I only have 2 issues with Man of Medan, with the first one being that the last few chapters feel very rushed. It almost feels like they ran out of time to work on this game and kind of just had to slap something together. The other one being the actual act of playing this game feels like a chore. Moving around in this feels very clunky, and I felt like I was constantly getting stuck on everything, which was a total pain in the ass. But despite those flaws, I still had a great time with this one. House of Ashes is the best Dark Pictures game. This installment feels like it learned from a lot of the shortcomings of the previous games and went out of its way to try and improve upon those things. I dug the way this game approached its narrative, and I do think there's some interesting themes interwoven throughout the story. The way it goes about approaching the horror elements felt very reminiscent of the first Predator movie, which is right up my alley. The characters are all very well written. While there were a few characters I personally didn't really care for, that's not because of the quality of the writing itself. The story also feels fully realized here. Not once does it feel like anything's being rushed. It doesn't feel like it's missing anything. It feels like the writers had a vision and were able to fully commit to it, and the story goes into some really cool areas here, especially in the finale. There is a love triangle story in this that does feel kind of out of place and bogs down the pacing at times, so I could have done without that melodrama. But this game gets so many other elements right that I think it definitely earns that #1 spot. And there is my official ranking of the Dark Pictures Anthology, at least this current lineup of games, because we know we're going to get more at some point down the road. But in the meantime, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, subscribe, and all that YouTube stuff. And what is your personal ranking of the Dark Pictures games? I'd love to know.